Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Of MSP 1337, it is the second week of 2026, episode 2, season 6. We've been doing this for way too long. This week, I have Robert Siciliano joining me. Robert has a background as a cybersecurity expert. He is got a lot on his plate. His biography is way longer than I'm going to take the time to read, but what I want to capture is he's a good guy hacker, private investigator, straight talk on safety and security, and getting rid of all the jargon to empower everyday protection. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. And I need to just make sure that when I say cybersecurity expert, it's more like cybersecurity awareness training expert, because I guarantee you that there are actual cybersecurity experts that are listening or viewing that are true cybersecurity experts. My expertise is changing behavior in such a way to get the people that in your charge, the people that you're responsible for, your colleagues, to get them to recognize risk effectively. That's my expertise, just so you know.
Fair. That's fair. And I should have said this at the beginning. For this episode, the theme of this episode is we are talking about behavior changes. We are talking about the emotional element, getting to the heart of people, making decisions that are hopefully in the essence of change as it pertains to looking at it through the lens of we are human, and if we don't change behaviors around, say, skills and awareness training, we're going to continue to see victims climb faster than we see resilience.
Yeah. I hear daily, criminals are so sophisticated. Well, what they really are is they're organized. And then I hear all the time, if these criminal hackers, if they could just take what they knew and they could cure cancer. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Why? Because the criminals themselves are sociopaths and psychopaths. They're hardcore narcissists, and they don't care about curing cancer. They just want to get paid. They look at you and I as their natural victims. They're the predator. We're the victims. They're the lion. We're the gazelle. And so I speak to my audience from that point of view so that they understand, this is what you're up against, And most of the audience, most of your employees, most of your colleagues, they are just regular everyday people that security is not at all on their radar. I mean, many of them don't lock their own doors. They don't even know where the keys to their house are. Most of them don't have home security systems. And truly, most of us want to believe that these things won't happen to them. And so what I do is I address all of that. I debunk all the cultural misnomers and myths that we essentially live by that prevent us from embracing security. So I talk about all that stuff, and we can talk about that today if you want.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You sparked something for me. I was thinking about, in the world of AI, the ability to, impersonate someone's voice. And to your point of we have to get out of the mindset of the we trust without verification. And it's so quick. If I recognize the voice on the other end of the phone, then what comes next out of their mouth, I'm already trusting because that's always worked for me in the past.
Yeah. So you've used the word trust at least 3 or 4 times already. And here's how it works. And we kind of got to back up a little bit, because I've been doing what I do now for 30 plus years, and what I have observed, and I started off doing what I do in personal protection, teaching women self-defense. My bones are in making sure that women aren't sexually assaulted, right? And then in my own life, as I evolved and as my business evolved, I got hacked in the mid 90s. I had an IBM PS1 consultant device that had Windows 3.0 and a 150 megabyte hard drive, right? And early on, accepting credit cards, I lost $3,000 due to, getting hacked, right? And that was back in the mid 90s. And that had a profound effect on how I viewed security. So from that point on, I wanted to understand, black hat hacking and identity theft, and I did, and I do. And so since that time, as I've been presenting for 30 plus years, I've truly come to the belief that human beings simply will never be fully prepared to manage risk effectively at least until we truly understand how we react to all the various frauds that are perpetrated. And what that fundamentally boils down to is, and it's so like granular, it's so basic, is that we as human beings are what is considered an interdependent species. And what that means is we depend on each other for our survival. We would not exist without each other. We require each other as social creatures to procreate. And so we gravitate towards each other for that purpose, okay? And in order to make that happen, in order to procreate, we need to fundamentally trust. And without that trust, we would just be in fear of each other, and we would never go towards each other. We would never procreate. And trust is our baseline. And what that means is, by default, we trust. And that means the people you meet, the emails you get, the texts you receive, the phone calls you receive, you pretty much want to, and to a degree need to, trust that the person who is reaching out to you has your best intentions. Okay. And so we give the benefit of the doubt all day, every day. That's our default. Some people say, I don't trust anybody. And I go, yeah, you do. You do. You can't help it. Not trusting others is not really natural to us. It's not as normal as trusting is. And so when we are trusting all the time the way that we do, all the bad guys do, and they understand this perfectly, and most of us don't, is that they just use the truth and our good nature against us all day, every day. They use truthful stories and examples, ruses, that they just twist up just even a little bit, and that's how they get us. Now, coupled with all of that is that when you trust by default, you like don't want to think that these things can ever happen to you, right? And as human beings, pretty much every day, we function in a level of denial, like all day, every day. Like denial is actually this wonderful thing that allows us to function in a world that's pretty chaotic when you think about it. You know, if you actually truly like looked at the fact that like we're spinning around thousands of miles an hour, hurtling through the solar system, it's pretty volatile when you think about it, right? And in the end, when it comes to security, and predators, sociopaths, psychopaths, these hardcore narcissists are all over the place. Like from the 30 plus years that I've been doing this, I've concluded that 97% of the people that you ever meet in your life, 97% are worthy of your trust, which also means 3% are not. Those are the hardcore bad actors, sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, and they are duly employed, okay? And so nobody ever wants to think that they will be the victim of a Jeffrey Dahmer, of a criminal hacker, somebody stealing their identity, somebody who assaults them. Nobody ever wants to think these things through. And so instead of doing so, they function in denial that these things can't and won't happen to me. That is our default. When you watch the 6 o'clock news and you see something bad happen in a neighborhood somewhere, and the reporter, the local TV reporter goes into the neighborhood with her microphone and she knocks on the neighbor's door. The neighbor's like outside her doorway. And she asks, what do you think about what happened? What do you think? What do you think? What does the neighbor always say?
I never thought it would happen in my neighborhood.
Exactly. Yeah. They always say the exact same thing. Why? Because by default, we don't want to think these things can happen to us. Therefore,
well, the same is true about the person that might be the threat actor, right? They're like, they're such a nice person. They always come to the functions, right? They come to the block parties and they bring a dish. And it's like, oh yeah, and they're a serial killer.
Sociopath. Yes, exactly. Right. And so we function like this. Like we trust by default. We don't want to think these things can happen to us. And so we walk through this life kind of delusional when it comes to security issues because we don't want to embrace these things. And part of the problem is like the way that we frame security as a culture, as a species. Well, I'll ask you a question, and this is like a true thing. I just got in front of like 200 tech C-suite executives, right? CIOs, CTOs, and so forth, right? And I told them, I said, I'm a guy that's got 22 security cameras. So if you learn, like this guy's got 22 security cameras inside and outside his house in total, like what might be your, I guess, definition of my outlook, my point of view, my view of the world around me? Like the guy's got 22 security cameras, he must be what?
He's either paranoid or he's got a lot of fish that he wants to monitor in the aquariums.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
both. But the first word out of your mouth, of course, is paranoid. All right.
Right.
So when I asked those 200 tech execs, the whole audience in one large, loud roar went paranoid, which was kind of funny actually. And they all started
Right.
looking at each other because like it was funny, you know. And what that means is that we as a culture we look at security as a form of paranoia. Now think about this for a
Sure.
second. If you've ever actually met somebody who's actually clinically paranoid, and I have a first cousin who the poor kid is in fact diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, and I think she might be living in her car right now. I mean, I love her to death. She's constantly at odds with her world. Like she truly does
Sure.
believe that people are out to get her. She truly does think the government has a conspiracy to get her. Like she's always really actually looking over her shoulder. Okay.
And for the audience, I think we're definitely on the path of it would sound like that is the direction that we're going, that everybody should also operate with that mindset. But the reality is that that's not what you're saying. It's that with the right mindset, these things don't have to be scary or impossible. It's not about not trusting the 97% because of the 3%. It's about moving or shifting from what I would call like situational or security awareness and getting into what's the word I'm looking for?
Security appreciation.
Okay.
That's the word. It's
Okay.
becoming the strategic human firewall. It's recognizing that technology is not going to save me. It's recognizing that risk is real, and it's recognizing
Yeah.
that the likelihood of something bad happening to me is actually kind of slim. But there's a chance. And like I put my seatbelt on because it is the smart thing to do and it gives me control.
Sure.
Engaging in like the absolute basics, having a different passcode across all of your various accounts, using a password manager, using two-factor authentication for any and
Right.
all of your critical accounts,
Right.
locking the doors to your home, having a home security system, like putting the seatbelt on. These are all smart decisions that enhance your security, layers of protection, make you a tougher, harder target for the bad guy. And once you reframe it personally, because part of my philosophy is that all security is personal. And when you start off in the business of teaching women self-defense and you evolve to information security, you understand that in the end, it really does boil down to me and in my
Sure.
security first and foremost. And when you as an individual begin to recognize I should lock my doors, have the home security system, get a password manager, change up my passcodes, take self-defense classes, you start to see the world around you a little bit differently. Like I can adopt all these various strategies and behaviors and I can be like more protected, like because I'm taking control of my life. Whereas
Sure.
most people go, it can't happen to me. And they function in denial. And when bad things happen, they're like, I don't understand how that happened. Well,
or
because you
or
never.
they end up not surviving if they survive at all. And the reality is, to your point, is it can be thrive instead of survive. It means that, meaning that you don't have to have a situation happen to you and have it change your world in a way that's truly catastrophic, because you were ready even though you were unlikely to have that event ever occur.
Exactly. This is the most intelligent conversation I've had all day. Thank you, sir.
Hey, I appreciate it. Do you think, and this is something that, so I spend a ton of time trying to get ITSPs, MSPs, MSSPs to have a mindset around things like, what does your governance look like as an organization? How do you do, I get that they can do technical safeguards all day long, password managers, central logging, and quite often many of them are very good at this. But when I start asking questions about, from a maturity standpoint, when they write a policy or they put something in place for enforcement, the thing they run into is getting their employees to adopt when they aren't willing to put the time in for them to understand the why. Why are you asking me to do this? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's, because I see where you're going, like in the individual component, when I help the human recognize I have solved the problem.
Yeah. This might just sound rudimentary to some, but it's kind of true. Like, I understand that, like, as far as all the compliance training goes, you need to check a box. You need to have metrics. You need to see who's the biggest risk in your organization. There needs to be repercussions for not being compliant and so forth. I get all that. It's necessary. It's there. It serves a purpose. It solves some problems. But you're not necessarily connecting with the end user in such a way where they get it, where they recognize it, like this is an important thing, that I want this and I need this. Like all of that compliance training is in effect security awareness training, and security awareness training is necessary. But what that is intellectually from the neck up. Security awareness is I recognize risk, I understand what it is, I know what these problems are, and I understand the solutions. Okay.
We haven't personalized it.
That is where security appreciation comes in. So the strategic human firewall is not only do I recognize all these various risks in their solutions, but it's important to me and it means something to me and it matters to me because it protects me and it protects my spouse, it protects my kids, it protects my bank account, my livelihood, my money, because it matters to me. And when you address the individual and when you address the human in that manner, right? No different than if you were talking to your 14-year-old daughter or your 18-year-old daughter who's going off to college who, you know, she's going to be consuming alcohol and she's going to be going to frat parties and there's risk there. And sitting down with her and having an uncomfortable conversation and kind of being graphic about what that might look like if she ends up in a compromised situation, that's an important conversation that I think that parents should have with their daughter and their sons that I don't know that they do because they don't know how to approach that. And so when you approach these conversations as the person sitting in front of you who is a potential risk to your organization is also a human who has their own worries and fears and concerns, and they don't necessarily know how to deal with any of this stuff, that they may not lock their own doors, they may not have a home security system, they may have never talked to their daughters about, you know, forcible rape for that matter, that when you address the human where the human is and their fears and concerns and kind of blow all the, you know, it can't happen to me, the denial and teach them about what trust is and how it blurs. It's the trust is the human blind spot when it comes to preventing fraud. It is a blind spot. We want to and need to trust unless you get granular on them, which is what I do. And then they're never going to truly understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Therefore, they're not going to embrace it. They're going to think that you telling them to do this hammer over the head phishing simulation training, you're paranoid. That's why you're making me do this. I'm busy. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And if I don't do it right, then I have repercussions. They're never going to click anything. You know,
sure.
That now you're affecting productivity. So
that's an episode for another day. The phishing simulations have almost gotten to the point where, like, I don't click on anything, so I'll never be a victim. Then tomorrow they're a victim.
The conversation needs to be had in regards to what security is and isn't, breaking down all the social norms, paranoia, and the whole thing. It can't happen to me. All that. We need to dispel all this stuff. We need to make security personal to the learner, to the employee. And I think that really starts with leadership. You know, like I find, and no offense to anybody, it's kind of like in some situations I see like, it's like the plumber having a broken toilet, right? If the plumber's got a broken toilet, that makes perfect sense to me. Like he's fixing toilets all day long. He gets home, he doesn't want to deal with any of that stuff. So sure. It's like if you as a security professional, if you haven't froze your credit, right?
Right.
If you as a security professional, if you're not using a different passcode for all your critical accounts, if you're not using two-factor authentication for everything, well, why? Do you not believe in security? You know, right. If you as a security professional, if you don't have a home security system, is it because you believe that you live in a safe neighborhood? Are you truly in denial? Like, and adopting all these various basics are not. I'm not saying any of this to disparage anybody. I'm saying it because if you truly believe in security, then you understand that, like, occasionally it can be a little inconvenient, but nothing that I've even said is at all difficult for anybody. Some of it might require a little bit of time, a little bit of an investment, but teaching or leading from the top down means congruency.
Sure. I'm thinking about it. You made me think about sales. You know, Anybody that has learned how to do sales can be given a line card and sell the products on it. But that doesn't mean that they're leveraging any of those products, services, good, bad, or otherwise, inside their own organization. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you're describing. Well, why don't you have the security system or freeze your credit? Well, I just haven't gotten to it yet. Or, it's not a driver because I'm not seeing a financial opportunity for growth. When you tell me that it's about reducing cost, I would rather look at I have more money coming in. You're not going to get me the win for reducing money going out.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I do.
It's
But
terrible mindset.
well, it is, and look at to truly understand where most human beings are coming from. One of the things that I ask my audience is, in the first like half an hour of the presentation is, and I literally ask the question, how many of you have a home security system? And if I get 10%, maybe 15% of the audience to raise their hand, that's a lot. Okay.
Sure.
And so that means that like 85% of the audience did not install a home security system. And then we get into a dialogue as to, well, why didn't you do that? And so they go, well, my husband says if they're going to break in, they're going to break in anyways. Okay, so right there is a fatalist attitude. I mean, do you really want some bad guy at the end of your bed at 3 a.m. with a knife? Like, do you really want that? Are you not going to do anything to prevent that from happening, like at all? And then from there, It's like, oh, we have insurance. Okay, now you're just deflecting. Okay, but then
the investment for future failure,
right? And then I hear, which is so human. I hear, oh, it's awful. They say, well, it's like, what's the likelihood of somebody breaking into my house? I mean, really, like, are they really going to break into my house? And then they say, but in the end, I just don't want to live like that. And I say, well, what do you mean when you say you don't want to install a home security system because you don't want to live like that? What does that mean? Well, I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to have to worry. And so by deducing that, you're saying that the acknowledgement of risk, the acknowledgement of predators, of burglars, of home invaders means that by installing that home security system, it's a constant reminder that you have to worry about something. Is that what you think? Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, but that's what that is. See, we look at security as something that we worry and fear, paranoia. Therefore, if we just function in denial, we don't have to worry and be in fear. Which is so simple and so human and so unnecessary.
I love the I'm going to say it's an extreme explanation, right? The burglarized and you're lucky that you got away with your life. You were stabbed 9 times. Like we're talking about an extreme example, right? And we know that's where the probability goes down the more extreme we get.
Yeah.
But think about things like on the negative side, like I don't go and get on a boat and go out on the lake when lightning just struck, inside of the mile radius, right? People don't get to stay in the public swimming pool when it's pouring down rain and they know lightning's in the area. And none of us are having conversations around like, oh, lightning would never hit me here. We don't even ask those questions. We either choose to get out of the water or someone maybe is more aggressively removing us from the water. But like, that's a high probability. And we don't look at that with fear. We don't say, I can't operate in life. I can't have the constant reminder of thunder and go on living without paranoia, right? Like paranoia is not there because of thunder and lightning. The same is true with gambling. People don't gamble. The probability of winning the lottery at a small dollar amount, if you regularly play the lottery, there is a good chance you will win something. May not be life altering, but you probably have a higher probability of winning $5,000 in the lottery if you play the dollar, regularly than you do of having a home invasion. But
yeah,
we're looking at this. They are looking at this through the wrong lens. And I think when we tie this to digital and cyber espionage, I think it becomes even easier. We don't ask questions for things like, well, what if the IRS shoots you an email or calls you? I better do what they tell me to because the consequences or repercussions are severe. Guess what? They're probably never going to call you. You should be suspect already because you are on the phone with someone allegedly claiming to be the IRS and telling you that you're going to lose all your money if you don't do what they say or you're going to go to jail, right? Urgency creates trust.
And trust being our default, we trust Apple, we trust Google, we trust Microsoft, and we get the pop-up, we get the email, we get the text. And people react and respond because they just want to and need to trust Google and Apple. And they use
Absolutely.
Gmail and they use Apple. And no one's ever actually sat them down and have a conversation with them in regards to, hey, let's kind of back up a little bit. And like, let me explain to you what's actually happening here. And what I don't do is I don't spend all this time, breaking down every single possible scam there is and what it
Sure.
looks like and how to protect from it and what the email actually says and hovering over this and looking at the actual return address. And I don't do any of that stuff. Why? Because that's already been done. And that's being done through compliance training. In the end, what you really need to do is get the person to actually care about what it is that they're looking at, to get them to actually recognize that, like somebody texting them with this wrong number text message that says, "Hey, Robert, are we supposed to have lunch tomorrow? Where are we meeting?" And your response
Hmm.
is, "I'm sorry, who's this?" If you don't already know that that's potentially fraudulent, you're already
Right.
going down the rabbit hole. And so just by understanding like the constant barrage of someone trying to pick your pocket via these inbound communications, right? And
Yeah.
understanding that the likelihood of your daughter being kidnapped and her screaming in the background when you pick up your phone is highly, highly, highly unlikely. It's more
Sure.
likely that it's AI voice cloning that someone's using and they're calling you because your phone number is on Facebook and your
Sure.
daughter's voice is on Instagram and you're just, one of 1,000 people that they're
Yeah.
communicating with in the last hour. And as long as you understand that,
Simultaneously.
like through AI scaling, it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's awful and
Yeah.
it's awesome what they're doing.
Yeah.
But most people are just in denial that that's even a thing to begin with. Like they don't even know. And so if you just kind of hold their hand a little bit and just kind of nurture them through the process, I think that we can actually move the needle. And I know this because when I start my presentations off, this is how my audience is.
Right.
They're doing this. And they're looking at me like, what is this guy going to tell me? And then
Arms
before you know,
crossed. Yeah.
when you're asking them questions and they're answering, and now they're asking you questions and you get into a dialogue. And now this became something that they didn't think it was going to be. It wasn't
Sure.
them being told what to do. It was them being essentially, engaged in a dialogue that's like, hey, this is kind of what's going on. This is
Yeah.
what I'm seeing. This is what's like happening right now. And it's kind of scary, but as long as you're aware of these basic things and how you might feel when the phone rings and the email comes in, how it affects you and your family and your kids and your bank account and your own identity and your personal security. And they're like, oh yeah, like that makes sense to me. Like I didn't realize that. And all of a sudden now their arms go down and they're like, okay, now what do I do? Like,
Sure.
now what do I do? Like, what are all the different things that I got to do now? Because I want to do this,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
makes me as we're getting near the end, it makes me ask this loaded question. You think about from a consumer standpoint how quick we are to take advantage of things that are free. AI, so ChatGPT or some of those tools like that, the free Google account or whatever you might be using, and you probably have in many cases recognized that you're giving something up to have this thing for free. And circling back to your paranoia, I just this keeps going through my head. If I were to offer the audience, like, hey, I have 22 cameras and I want you guys to be as secure as I am, all of you, I would like to provide you with the same level of security that I have, and I'm not going to charge you for it at all. I guarantee you, every person in that room just developed paranoia of thinking through having you provide them with a security camera system that's free to them, but on the flip side, have no problem giving up their information or their identity for things like the free Gmail service or the free resources. Yet, as soon as we go into thinking about my physical security and my physical privacy, we have had that paranoia for decades.
Decades.
I think we're getting close to that as a result of AI along the same lines.
We are incapable of determining a voice clone. And right now, the face swap, it's not perfect. So most of us who are paying attention understand the difference. But the technology is available to make a perfect face swap. It's perfect. It's right there. It's just not consumable right now, but it's there.
I've seen some
And
YouTube videos that were pretty darn close. So
yeah,
depending
yeah,
on the segment of the video you're watching, it is
yeah,
perfect, but
yeah,
then it
yeah,
drifts and it gets off track.
yeah. The point is that we
Yeah.
are so close to perfect fraud that, and we're so not ready for it
No.
that unless there is a shift in addressing the human, then I don't know that we're going to, I think it might get a lot worse. Look at, I've never seen so many frequent high dollar 6 and 7 figure frauds happening to people
Right.
in such a concentrated period of time with the pig butchering. I met a couple
Yeah.
just a few weeks ago. They lost $600,000 in a pig butchering scam because they want to believe that this investment is an actual real thing. And these are smart, generally smart people. And unless we actually change it from the top down, I fear that it's going to just keep getting worse. But there's ways to fix this, and all they've got to do is like just make a shift.
Yeah, I think that the reality is we can't live in paranoia, or there's really no point. Like that's not living, right? But on the flip side, we treat this in the business space, right? We do tabletop exercises and we strategize around incident response planning. Why wouldn't we put at least some of that same effort into our own personal lives?
Yes. Look at where our personal lives are on the job every day. You can't help but to be dealing with your kid at school who's sick, and your spouse who you're having an argument with, and your daughter who has dance practice after school. You have all this personal stuff going on anyways. And if you just get the whole personal protection, security is
Yeah.
is personal out of the way, then everything that you feed them after that begins to make sense to them.
Yeah, for sure. Robert, if someone is looking to find you, want to know more about the services that you offer, how do they go about finding you?
I'm easy. Well, first of all, Robert Siciliano, just Google me. Not many
Okay.
of us out there. Siciliano. I'm all over the socials. And my website, of course, a couple of them. Protectnowllc.com. Again, protectnowllc.com.
Okay, last thing, I've been asking this quite a bit. In 2025, what was one book that you picked up and said, everybody needs to read this book?
Oh, man.
And it can be fiction too.
Yeah, I actually read a book that was handed to me. It was an old book called The Celestine Prophecy. Celestine Prophecy, and it actually had like 10 principles of essentially how humans interact with each other in
Okay.
story form. Yeah, it was a fiction book. And what it talked about, which resonated with me quite a bit, was it talked about vampiric people who
Okay.
suck the life out of you. And
Sure.
that makes a lot of sense to me because of the business I'm in. And those are the narcissists in our lives. Those are the sociopaths, vampiric
Nice.
people. Celestine Prophecy.
Got it. I've got one for you. It's also fiction. It falls in line with what we're talking about. I am a John Grisham diehard. I think I've read literally every book, that at least close to every book. I know he's now over 50 plus books. I'm not quite there, I'm sure. But he just released his latest one. It's called The Widow. And I
Okay.
don't want to give away the story, but essentially it starts out with the widow is a wealthy widow comes into a small town office to update her estate, her will. And I'll leave you with that because that's the beginning of the book.
Okay.
And it's a 70 chapter. You can probably read it in a couple nights, but it goes hand in hand with literally everything that we have talked about, tied to what is happening in the world around us, and assumptions and paranoia. I would say that I think John Grisham may have shifted the thriller aspects of what he normally writes about in this one.
I love it. Perfect. The Widow.
All right. For everybody that has been listening, this has been an episode of 1337. Thanks and have a great week.